The rope burned against Amelia Barrett's wrists as Sheriff Dawson hauled her through the dusty streets of Socorro, New Mexico, and she knew with absolute certainty that her uncle had finally made his move to steal everything her father had built. The September sun beat down mercilessly on her bare head, and curious townspeople emerged from shops and homes to witness her humiliation, their whispers following her like a swarm of angry hornets as the lawman dragged her toward the jailhouse at the end of Main Street. "I did not steal that land deed," Amelia said through gritted teeth, struggling to keep her footing as loose stones threatened to trip her. "That ranch is mine. My father left it to me." "Your uncle says different," Sheriff Dawson replied, his weathered face showing no sympathy. "Says you forged some papers after your daddy passed. Judge will sort it out." Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs. Her father had died only 3 months ago, succumbing to pneumonia during an unseasonably cold June. Thomas Barrett had been a respected rancher in Socorro County, building his spread from nothing over 20 years of backbreaking work. He had taught Amelia everything about running cattle, managing hands, and surviving in the harsh New Mexico territory. She had been by his side every day since her mother's death when she was 12 years old, learning the business that would one day be hers. Except her uncle, Martin Barrett, had other plans. The jailhouse was a squat adobe building that held the perpetual smell of sweat, dust, and despair. Sheriff Dawson unlocked the iron-barred cell and pushed Amelia inside with less care than he would show a stray dog. The door clanged shut with a finality that made her stomach turn. "Uncle Martin is lying," she said, gripping the bars. "Please, Sheriff. My father's will was filed properly with the courthouse. I have witnesses who saw him sign it." "Then you got nothing to worry about," Dawson said, turning away. "Judge Thompson arrives day after tomorrow. He'll hear both sides." Amelia sank onto the narrow cot, fighting back tears of frustration and fear. Her uncle had been planning this, she realized now. He had visited the ranch twice since her father's death, making sympathetic noises about helping his poor orphaned niece, all while studying the layout of the property and the locations of the important documents. She had trusted him, fool that she was, and now he had somehow gotten possession of what appeared to be an earlier version of her father's will, one that supposedly left everything to Martin as the eldest male heir. The afternoon dragged by with agonizing slowness. Amelia paced her cell, trying to think of solutions. She had hired 3 ranch hands who could testify to her father's intentions, but would their words stand against a family member's claim? The lawyer who had drawn up the proper will lived in Albuquerque and might not arrive in time for the hearing. Everything she had ever known and loved hung in the balance, dependent on the judgment of a traveling circuit judge who knew nothing of her or her family. As evening shadows lengthened across the cell floor, she heard boots approaching. Amelia looked up, expecting the sheriff with an evening meal, but instead found herself facing a tall cowboy she had never seen before. He stood in the corridor beyond her cell, hat in his hands, studying her with eyes the color of aged whiskey. "Miss Barrett?" he asked, his voice a deep rumble. "Who are you?" "Name is Jackson Stone. I worked for your father back in '73. Only for about 6 months before I moved on to Wyoming, but he was the finest man I ever rode for." He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Heard in the saloon just now what your uncle is trying to do. Wanted you to know it is not right, and I aim to help if I can." Amelia approached the bars, studying him more carefully. Jackson Stone was perhaps 27 or 28, with sun-darkened skin and the lean, muscular build of a man who spent his life in the saddle. Dark hair curled slightly at his collar, and a day's worth of stubble shadowed his strong jaw. There was something solid about him, something that spoke of reliability despite her never having laid eyes on him before today. "Why would you help me?" she asked cautiously. "If you only worked for my father 7 years ago, why involve yourself now?" "Because I know what kind of man Thomas Barrett was, and I can guess what kind of man his brother must be if he would steal from his own niece." Jackson's eyes held hers steadily, "and because I have seen too many people get trampled by those willing to lie and cheat. Sometimes a man has to stand up for what is right, even when it is not his fight." Something warm flickered in Amelia's chest, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness that had consumed her since this morning. I appreciate the sentiment, Mr. Stone, but I do not know how you could help. Unless you witnessed my father signing his will, which seems unlikely. Maybe not the will, but I know some things about your uncle that might prove useful. Jackson stepped closer to the bars. When I was working the Barrett ranch, Martin came to visit. He and your father had a terrible argument about money. Martin wanted Thomas to invest in some silver mine scheme, and when your father refused, Martin threatened him. Said the ranch should have been his by right since he was older, and that Thomas had stolen their father's affection and fortune. Amelia's breath caught. You heard this? Every word. I was mending fence just outside the study window. They were shouting loud enough to wake the dead. Jackson's expression hardened. Your uncle called your father some choice names and swore he would get what was owed to him one way or another. I told your father afterward that he should watch his back around that man. Would you testify to this in court? That is why I am here, Miss Barrett. Relief flooded through her, so intense it made her knees weak. Thank you. I cannot tell you what this means to me. Jackson's stern expression softened slightly. Your father gave me a chance when I was just a green kid who barely knew one end of a cow from the other. He taught me patience and fairness. Least I can do is return the favor by helping his daughter. They talked through the bars until full darkness fell, and Amelia found herself sharing more than just the details of her current predicament. There was something about Jackson Stone that invited confidence. He listened without judgment as she described the difficulty of being a woman rancher in a territory where most men assume she should marry and let a husband manage things. He nodded with understanding when she spoke of her loneliness since her father's death, surrounded by ranch hands who respected her but could never be true friends across the divide of employer and employee. You never thought about marrying? Jackson asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. Forgive me, that's none of my business. It is a fair question. Amelia wrapped her arms around herself against the evening chill. There was a man, a few years back, Daniel Morris. He seemed kind at first, but it became clear he was more interested in the Barrett ranch than in me. When I refused his proposal, he spread rumors around Socorro that I was unnatural, preferring ranch work to proper feminine pursuits. She smiled bitterly. So no, marriage has not seemed an attractive option. Then Daniel Morris was a fool, Jackson said quietly. Any man would be lucky to have a strong, capable woman like you. The words, spoken with such simple sincerity, made heat rise to Amelia's cheeks. She was grateful for the darkness that hid her blush. Before she could respond, Sheriff Dawson appeared with a plate of beans and cornbread. Visiting hours are over, Stone, he said gruffly. Let the lady eat in peace. Jackson settled his hat back on his head. I will be at the courthouse when Judge Thompson arrives, Miss Barrett. You have my word. Thank you, Amelia said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. And please, call me Amelia. His smile transformed his face, softening the hard edges and revealing laugh lines around his eyes. Amelia, I will see you soon. After he left, Amelia ate her meager dinner with more appetite than she had expected. For the first time since her arrest, she felt something other than despair. Jackson Stone's appearance seemed almost providential, a skilled cowboy from her father's past emerging exactly when she needed help most. She found herself thinking not just about his offer of testimony, but about the way his eyes had held hers, the warmth in his voice when he called her strong and capable. Stop it, she told herself sternly. This is not the time for romantic foolishness. Focus on keeping your ranch. But as she lay on the hard cot that night, listening to the sounds of Socorro settling into sleep, her thoughts kept returning to a tall cowboy with whiskey-colored eyes and a voice like distant thunder. Morning came too slowly and too quickly at once. Amelia woke stiff and sore, her back protesting the inadequate bedding. Sheriff Dawson brought coffee and biscuits at sunrise, along with the information that Judge Thompson had arrived early and would hear her case this very afternoon. Your uncle is already at the courthouse with his lawyer, Dawson said, not unkindly. You got anyone speaking for you? Jackson Stone offered to testify, Amelia said, straightening her spine despite her wrinkled dress and tangled hair. And I will speak for myself. The sheriff looked skeptical, but said nothing more. At noon, he escorted her from the jail to the courthouse, a 2-story territorial building that served as the center of Socorro's limited government. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the spectacle of a family dispute over valuable ranch land. Amelia held her head high as she climbed the steps, refusing to show the fear that churned in her gut. The courtroom was packed with curious onlookers. Amelia spotted Martin Barrett immediately sitting at a table with a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Her uncle had the same Barrett features as her father, the same strong nose and square jaw, but where Thomas had been honest and open, Martin's face held a calculating coldness. He did not meet her eyes as she was led to a chair on the opposite side of the room. Judge Thompson was a portly man with magnificent white whiskers and the weary expression of someone who had seen every kind of human wickedness. He banged his gavel to quiet the murmuring crowd and began reading the particulars of the case. Martin Barrett claims that his niece, Amelia Barrett, has forged documents to claim ownership of the Barrett Ranch, and that she has stolen property rightfully belonging to him as heir to his brother Thomas Barrett. Miss Barrett denies these charges. We will hear testimony from both parties. The judge looked at Martin's lawyer. Proceed, Mr. Hutchins. The lawyer stood, smoothing his already immaculate jacket. Your Honor, I represent Martin Barrett, the elder brother of the late Thomas Barrett. Upon Thomas's untimely death this past June, my client traveled to Socorro to pay his respects and to ensure his niece was being cared for properly. Imagine his shock when he discovered that Miss Barrett had produced a will, allegedly signed by Thomas, leaving the entire ranch and all assets to her. This was particularly surprising since my client possesses the actual will, signed and witnessed in 1871, which clearly states that in the event of Thomas's death, all property shall pass to Martin as the eldest male heir. Hutchins produced a document with a flourish, presenting it to Judge Thompson. As you can see, Your Honor, this will is properly executed and predates any document Miss Barrett might have forged. Amelia's hands clenched in her lap. The will looked genuine, right down to what appeared to be her father's signature. But it could not be real. Her father would never have left everything to Martin, not after their bitter estrangement. Miss Barrett, Judge Thompson said, do you have legal representation? No, Your Honor, but I have the truth. Amelia stood, ignoring the whispers this caused. My father did write a will in 1871, but he changed it in 1878, after I turned 18. He wanted to ensure I would be provided for, that I could continue running the ranch we built together. The new will was properly filed with the county clerk. I did not forge anything. Do you have a copy of this supposed new will? Hutchins asked with barely concealed contempt. It was in my father's study. When I was arrested, I did not have time to retrieve it. Amelia's mind raced. But the county clerk will have a record of the filing. Actually, no, Hutchins said smugly. We checked with the clerk's office this morning. There is no record of any will filed by Thomas Barrett after 1871, which strongly suggests, Your Honor, that Miss Barrett's story is fabricated. The courtroom erupted in chatter. Amelia felt the floor tilting beneath her feet. How was this possible? She had been present when her father filed the new will. The clerk, old Mr. Henderson, had congratulated her father on making proper provision for his daughter. Judge Thompson banged his gavel for silence. That is a serious accusation, Mr. Hutchins. Do you have any evidence that Miss Barrett forged documents? The absence of proper filing is suggestive, Your Honor. But more than that, I call Martin Barrett to testify to his niece's desperate financial situation and her potential motives for fraud. Martin took the stand, placing his hand on the Bible with every appearance of solemnity. Under Hutchins's questioning, he painted a picture of Amelia as a willful, ungrateful girl who had always been jealous of her uncle's success. He claimed she had run the ranch into debt through poor management and needed to maintain control to avoid creditors. It pains me to say this about my own niece, Martin said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. But Amelia was never suited to running a ranch. Thomas indulged her tomboyish ways, but after his death, reality set in. She is facing ruin and will say anything, do anything, to keep property that rightfully belongs to me. Amelia wanted to scream. Every word was a lie. The ranch was profitable, the books were clean, and she had never been anything but respectful to her uncle during his infrequent visits. But how could she prove it? "Your Honor, I request permission to call a witness." A deep voice rang out from the back of the courtroom. Every head turned. Jackson Stone stood in the aisle, still wearing his dusty trail clothes but somehow commanding attention like a general addressing troops. Judge Thompson raised his eyebrows. "And you are?" "Jackson Stone, Your Honor. I worked for Thomas Barrett in 1873 and witnessed a conversation that bears directly on this case." "Objection," Hutchins said quickly. "This witness has no relevance to the question of which will is legitimate." "On the contrary," Jackson said, walking forward with calm confidence, "I can speak to Martin Barrett's character and his long-standing desire to possess his brother's property by any means necessary." The judge considered this. "I will allow it. Take the stand, Mr. Stone." As Jackson was sworn in, Amelia felt hope rekindling. He looked directly at her before turning to face the judge, and something in his gaze steadied her racing heart. "Mr. Stone," Judge Thompson said, "tell us what you know." "In the spring of 1873, I was working the Barrett Ranch, mending fence near the main house," Jackson began, his voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. "Martin Barrett came to visit, and he and Thomas had an argument. I could not help but overhear since they were shouting." "What was the nature of this argument?" the judge asked. "Martin wanted Thomas to invest in a silver mine. Thomas refused, saying he had looked into it and the mine was played out. Martin became angry and said that Thomas had always gotten everything, that their father had favored him unfairly, and that the ranch should have been Martin's by rights as the older brother." Jackson's eyes were steady, his words measured. "Martin threatened Thomas. He said he would get what was owed to him one way or another, and that Thomas had better watch his back." The courtroom exploded with noise. Martin leaped to his feet, face purple with rage. "That is a lie! I never said any such thing!" "Order!" Judge Thompson bellowed, slamming his gavel repeatedly. When silence finally returned, he fixed Martin with a penetrating stare. "Sit down, Mr. Barrett. You will have your chance to respond." He turned back to Jackson. "Can anyone corroborate your testimony?" "Thomas Barrett could have, if he were alive," Jackson said. "I told him what I heard and warned him to be careful around his brother. Thomas said it was not the first time Martin had made such threats." Hutchins jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is all hearsay and supposition. It proves nothing about the validity of the wills in question." "It proves that Martin Barrett had motive to fabricate documents and steal from his niece," Jackson replied, his voice hardening. "It establishes a pattern of greed and entitlement that goes back years." Judge Thompson leaned back in his chair, stroking his whiskers thoughtfully. "Mr. Stone makes a valid point. However, we still have the problem of two wills and no clear way to determine which is legitimate." He looked at Amelia. "Miss Barrett, is there anyone else who can testify to your father's intentions?" Amelia racked her brain desperately. Then, like a lightning bolt, memory struck. "Your Honor, my father had a lockbox at the Socorro Bank. He kept important documents there, including a copy of his will. I have a key." "Convenient," Hutchins sneered. "Did you just remember this lockbox, Miss Barrett?" "No, I have always known about it, but in the shock of my arrest, I did not think to mention it." Amelia turned to the judge. "Please, Your Honor, send someone to check." "The bank manager, Mr. Callahan, can open the box in the presence of witnesses." Judge Thompson considered this, then nodded. "Sheriff Dawson, take 2 witnesses and go to the bank. Bring back the contents of Thomas Barrett's lockbox. We will recess until you return." The wait was agony. Amelia sat in her chair, flanked by a bailiff, while the crowd milled about and speculated in hushed tones. Jackson caught her eye from across the room and gave her a small nod of encouragement. Martin and his lawyer huddled in whispered conversation, and Amelia noticed her uncle kept casting nervous glances toward the door. After what felt like hours but was likely only 45 minutes, Sheriff Dawson returned. He carried a metal box and was accompanied by Mr. Callahan and two prominent Socorro businessmen as witnesses. "Your Honor," Dawson said, "we opened the box at the bank in front of witnesses. This is what we found." Judge Thompson took the box and began examining its contents. Amelia held her breath. Her father had told her about the lockbox years ago, explaining that he kept copies of important documents there in case of fire or theft. "Please," she prayed silently, "please let the will be there." The judge pulled out several papers, studying each one carefully. Finally, he held up a document and read it in silence, his expression growing stern. When he finished, he looked up at Martin Barrett with unconcealed disgust. "This lockbox contains a will dated April 5th, 1878, leaving all of Thomas Barrett's property and assets to his daughter, Amelia Catherine Barrett. It is signed, witnessed, and notarized." Judge Thompson's voice rose. "It also contains a letter written by Thomas Barrett and dated 2 weeks before his death, expressing his concern that his brother Martin might attempt to steal from Amelia after Thomas's passing. He writes that he has seen Martin in Socorro asking questions about property laws and inheritance, and fears Martin may try to produce a forged earlier will." The courtroom erupted. Amelia felt tears streaming down her face, tears of relief and vindication. Martin Barrett went ashen, then tried to bolt for the door. Sheriff Dawson caught him before he made it 3 steps. "Mr. Hutchins," Judge Thompson said coldly, "did you know your client's will was fraudulent?" The lawyer had lost all his smooth confidence. "Your Honor, Mr. Barrett assured me the document was legitimate. I had no knowledge of any forgery." "That remains to be seen, Sheriff. Place Martin Barrett under arrest for attempted fraud and theft. We will have a separate hearing on criminal charges." The judge turned to Amelia, his expression softening. "Miss Barrett, please stand." Amelia rose on shaking legs. "The charges against you are dismissed. Your ownership of the Barrett Ranch is confirmed and validated. You are free to go." Judge Thompson paused. "I apologize for the ordeal you have endured. Your father was clearly a wise man who knew his brother's character well." Amelia could barely choke out her thanks. The courtroom spun around her, faces blurring together as relief and exhaustion crashed over her in waves. Strong hands caught her elbows, steadying her, and she looked up into Jackson Stone's concerned face. "Easy now," he said quietly. "You are all right. It is over." "Thank you," she managed. "If you had not testified, if you had not been there, I do not know what would have happened." "You would have found a way," Jackson said with certainty. "You are the daughter of Thomas Barrett. You do not give up." They emerged from the courthouse into the bright afternoon sunlight. A crowd had gathered on the steps, and to Amelia's surprise, many of them were smiling and offering congratulations. It seemed the good people of Socorro had not been fooled by Martin Barrett's lies. Old Mr. Callahan from the bank approached, doffing his hat. "Miss Barrett, I must apologize. When Martin Barrett came to town 3 weeks ago, he asked me questions about your father's accounts. I should have been more discreet." "You could not have known his intentions, Mr. Callahan," Amelia assured him. "Thank you for preserving my father's lockbox." As the banker moved away, Jackson touched her arm gently. "You should get some rest. You have been through a terrible experience." "I cannot rest yet. I need to return to the ranch, make sure everything is all right. Martin was staying there, and I do not know what damage he may have done." Amelia looked up at Jackson. "Will you ride with me? I know I have no right to ask more of you, but I would feel safer with company." "You do not have to ask," Jackson said simply. "I will stay as long as you need me." They retrieved Amelia's horse from the livery stable where it had been kept since her arrest. Jackson's own mount, a sturdy buckskin gelding, was already saddled and waiting. As they rode out of Socorro toward the Barrett Ranch, Amelia felt some of the tension draining from her shoulders. The familiar landscape spread around them, juniper-dotted hills rising toward distant mountains, the Rio Grande a silver ribbon in the valley below. "I cannot believe it is over," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. This morning I thought I would lose everything. Your father protected you even after death, Jackson observed. That letter in the lockbox was the key. It established that he knew Martin might try something. I wonder how he knew. Amelia frowned. Father never told me about Martin's inquiries in town. He probably did not want to worry you while he was sick, but Thomas Barrett was no fool. He knew his brother. Jackson was quiet for a moment. My own father was not much like yours. He drank away everything we had and left my mother to raise 5 children in poverty. I have always admired men like Thomas who take their responsibilities seriously. Amelia glanced at him with new understanding. Is that why you became a cowboy? To escape? To find something better, Jackson corrected. I worked ranches all over the territory, learning everything I could. Someday I hope to have my own spread, though that dream seems less likely as I get older and no closer to having the capital. How old are you? Amelia asked, then blushed at her boldness. Forgive me, that was impertinent. Jackson smiled. 28, and you do not have to apologize for honest curiosity. What about you? Your father's letter mentioned you were 18 when he changed the will. That would make you 25 now. 26, actually. My birthday was in July. Amelia urged her horse up a steeper section of trail. Sometimes I feel much older. Running a ranch alone ages a person. They rode on, trading stories of their lives with an ease that surprised Amelia. Jackson told her about his wandering years, the different ranches and towns he had seen, the characters he had met. She described the challenges of managing stubborn cattle and stubborn cowboys, the satisfaction of seeing new calves each spring, the heartbreak of drought and hard winters. The Barrett Ranch came into view as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The main house was a sprawling adobe structure that Thomas Barrett had added to over the years, with a wide portal across the front and cottonwood trees providing shade. Outbuildings dotted the property: bunkhouse, barn, smokehouse, tool shed. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, small dark shapes against the golden grass. Amelia felt emotion welling up at the sight. This was home, the only real home she had ever known. Her mother had died here. Her father had built his dreams here, and she had grown from child to woman within these boundaries. Martin had tried to take it from her, but he had failed. As they approached the house, 3 men emerged from the barn. Amelia recognized her ranch hands: Hector Padilla, her foreman, and a man her father had trusted implicitly, young Charlie Dunn, barely 19 and eager to prove himself, and Pete Rawlings, a seasoned cowboy who had been with the Barrett Ranch for 5 years. Miss Amelia, Hector called out, genuine relief in his voice. Thank God. We heard you had been arrested and did not know what to think. It was a misunderstanding, Amelia said, dismounting. My uncle tried to steal the ranch by claiming I had forged documents, but the truth came out in court, and he is the one in jail now. The 3 ranch hands exchanged satisfied looks. We never trusted that Martin Barrett, Pete said, spitting into the dust. He was nosing around here before you got arrested, going through your father's office. We tried to stop him, but he said he had every right as family. Amelia's hands clenched. Did he take anything? He left with a saddlebag stuffed full of papers, Charlie admitted, looking ashamed. We did not know if we should stop him or not, him being your uncle and all. He took my father's will, Amelia said, the one that proved my ownership. He must have destroyed it, hoping that without it, his forged document would stand up in court. She turned to Jackson. If you had not testified, if I had not remembered the lockbox, he would have succeeded. Jackson was studying the ranch with professional interest. How many head of cattle are you running? About 800, Amelia said. We sold 200 in the spring to drovers heading north. The herd is in good shape, and we have plenty of grass and water even in this dry season. That is a substantial operation for a woman to manage alone, Jackson observed, and there was respect in his voice rather than doubt. I have good men helping me, Amelia said, nodding to her hands. Hector knows as much about ranching as anyone in New Mexico. I could not do it without him and the others. Hector looked pleased but uncomfortable with the praise. Your father taught us all well, Miss Amelia. We are just following his example. As the sun set, Amelia invited Jackson to stay for dinner. The cook, Maria Padilla, Hector's wife, was overjoyed to see Amelia home safely and immediately set about preparing a feast to celebrate. The kitchen filled with the aromas of roasted chicken, beans, fresh tortillas, and Maria's famous green chili stew. They ate at the long table in the ranch house dining room, Amelia at the head where her father used to sit, Jackson beside her, and the ranch hands arranged around them. It felt right, Amelia realized. This was how meals had been when her father was alive. Everyone together like a family rather than employer, and employees separated by invisible barriers. "What will happen to your uncle?" Charlie asked between bites of tortilla. "He will stand trial for fraud and attempted theft," Amelia said. "Judge Thompson seemed quite angry about the whole affair. I imagine Martin will spend considerable time in prison." "Good," Pete said bluntly. "Man like that does not deserve to walk free." After dinner, Jackson helped Amelia check the horses in the barn while the others cleaned up. In the warm dimness, surrounded by the comfortable sounds of animals settling for the night, Amelia found herself intensely aware of Jackson's presence. He moved with easy competence, checking hooves and water buckets with the automatic skill of a man who had spent his life around livestock. "You have a fine operation here," he said, stroking the nose of a pretty chestnut mare. "Your father would be proud of what you have accomplished." "I hope so," Amelia said softly. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing right by his memory. There is so much to manage, and there are times when I feel overwhelmed." Jackson turned to face her, his expression serious in the lantern light. "Amelia, you stood up in court today and fought for what was yours. You did not crumble or beg or accept defeat. You are exactly the kind of strong person this territory needs. Your father knew that, which is why he trusted you with his life's work." The words, and the conviction behind them, made Amelia's throat tight. She had received so little encouragement over the past months, so many people questioning her ability to run the ranch, that Jackson's faith felt like water in a drought. "Thank you," she managed. "For everything, for testifying, for riding out here with me, for treating me like I have sense." "You have more than sense. You have courage." Jackson stepped closer and Amelia's breath caught. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. And she realized she wanted him to, wanted to feel his arms around her, wanted to know if the attraction she felt was mutual. But Jackson stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should let you rest. You have had an exhausting few days." Disappointment and relief warred in Amelia's chest. "Where will you stay tonight? You are welcome to the bunkhouse, or there is a guest room in the main house." "The bunkhouse is fine. I am used to cowboy accommodations," Jackson smiled. "But thank you for the offer." They walked back to the house together, the night air cool and fresh after the day's heat. Stars blazed overhead in the clear New Mexico sky, more stars than Amelia had seen during her time in the Socorro jail. Everything felt new and precious, as though she had been given a second chance at life. At the porch steps, Jackson paused. "What will you do now? Now that the ranch is secured, I mean." "Continue as I have been," Amelia said. "There's always work to do. We need to repair the south fence line, and some of the cattle need to be moved to higher pasture before winter. Hector thinks we should buy a new breeding bull." She smiled. "The list never ends." "Sounds like you could use another experienced hand," Jackson said carefully. "If you were hiring, I mean." Amelia's heart jumped. "Are you offering to stay on?" "I am between positions at the moment, and this is good country, plus I have unfinished business here." His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her pulse race. "I would like to see how things turn out for you, Amelia Barrett." "I would like that too," Amelia said, not bothering to hide her smile. "Consider yourself hired, Jackson Stone. We can discuss wages in the morning." "Fair enough." Jackson touched the brim of his hat. "Good night, Amelia. Sleep well." "Good night." Amelia watched him walk toward the bunkhouse, his tall figure gradually disappearing into the darkness. Only when he was completely out of sight did she turn and enter the house, her heart singing with an emotion she barely dared name. The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Jackson Stone proved himself an invaluable addition to the Barrett Ranch. He worked alongside Hector and the others, mending fences, moving cattle, breaking a few wild horses that Amelia had purchased from a Navajo trader. He took orders without resentment, but also offered suggestions that showed his years of experience. More than that, he treated Amelia with a respect that made her blossom. He asked her opinion on ranch matters and actually listened to her answers. When she made decisions, he backed her up without question. The other hands, seeing Jackson's attitude, became even more comfortable working for a female boss. Amelia found herself watching for Jackson throughout the day, noting the way sunlight caught in his dark hair, the strength in his arms as he lifted heavy feed sacks, the patience he showed with the horses. More than once she caught him watching her too, and the heat in his gaze made her feel things she had not experienced since her brief, disappointing courtship with Daniel Morris years ago. But Jackson maintained a careful distance. He was friendly and helpful, but he never crossed the line into impropriety. Amelia did not know whether to be grateful or frustrated by his restraint. One evening in late October, as the air took on the sharp edge of approaching winter, Amelia was working on the ranch books in her father's study. Numbers swam before her eyes, income and expenses that needed to be balanced and recorded. She was so absorbed that she did not hear footsteps until a knock on the door frame made her look up. Jackson stood in the doorway, hat in hand. "Am I disturbing you?" "Not at all. I was just finishing up." Amelia set down her pen, grateful for the interruption. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to give you my report on the cattle count. Hector and I finished checking the north pasture today." Jackson came into the study, and in the lamplight his face looked serious. "We are down about 30 head from what we expected." Amelia frowned. 30? Are you certain?" "Hector thought it might just be some strays that wandered into the hills, but I found tracks suggesting otherwise. Someone has been cutting out cattle and driving them off your range." Anger surged through Amelia. "Rustlers? Are you certain?" "Pretty certain. The tracks lead north toward the rough country near the Magdalena Mountains, classic rustler territory." Jackson's jaw tightened. "I wanted to ask your permission before doing anything, but I think Hector, Pete, and I should ride out tomorrow and see if we can track them down." "No," Amelia said immediately. "That is too dangerous. Rustlers are often armed and willing to kill to protect their stolen stock." "Which is why we cannot let them get away with it," Jackson countered. "If word spreads that the Barrett Ranch is easy pickings, you will have every thief in the territory helping themselves to your cattle. We have to send a message." Amelia stood, pacing to the window. Outside, darkness had fallen completely, and she could see her reflection in the glass, a slender woman with worry etched on her face. Jackson was right, of course. Weakness invited predation. But the thought of him riding into danger made her stomach clench. "I will go with you," she said, turning back to face him. "Absolutely not." "It is my ranch, my cattle, my right to defend what is mine," Amelia said firmly. "I can shoot as well as any man, and I know this country better than you do." Jackson looked like he wanted to argue, but could see the determination in her face. "Amelia, I understand your feelings, but if something happened to you, this ranch would have no one. At least if something happens to me or the other hands, you can hire replacements." "Nothing is going to happen," Amelia insisted, "but I am not sending my men into danger while I sit safely at home. We will all go, all 5 of us, and we will bring those rustlers to justice." They stared at each other, locked in a battle of wills. Finally, Jackson sighed. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met." "I choose to take that as a compliment." "It was meant as one." Jackson's expression softened. "All right, we ride at first light, but you stay behind the rest of us if there is trouble. Agreed?" "Agreed," Amelia lied smoothly. She had no intention of cowering in the rear if shooting started, but there was no point arguing about hypothetical situations. Jackson moved closer, and suddenly the study felt very small. "Amelia, I need you to understand something. If we are riding into potential danger tomorrow, I cannot leave things unsaid tonight." Her heart began to hammer. "What things?" "From the moment I saw you in that jail cell looking so fierce and brave despite everything you were facing, I felt something I had not felt in years. maybe ever. Jackson's voice roughened. These past weeks, working beside you, watching you manage this ranch with such skill and grace, that feeling has only grown stronger. I know it is not my place, and I know I have nothing to offer a woman like you, but I need you to know that I care for you. Deeply. Amelia could hardly breathe. Jackson, I feel the same way. I have been trying not to, telling myself it was foolish and inappropriate, but I cannot help it. When I see you working with the horses, when you smile at something I have said, when you defend my decisions to the others, I feel happy in a way I have not felt since before my father died. Then why have we been dancing around each other like nervous colts? Jackson asked, and there was a hint of amusement in his voice despite the intensity of the moment. Because you are my employee, and I did not want you to think I was taking advantage of my position, Amelia admitted. Because everyone in Socorro already thinks I am strange for running a ranch, and I did not want to give them more reason to talk, because I have been hurt before and was afraid to trust again. And now? Now I think life is too short and too uncertain to waste time on fear. Amelia stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Now I think if we are riding into danger tomorrow, I want to know what it is like to be held by you. Just once. Jackson's arms came around her instantly, pulling her against his chest. He was warm and solid, smelling of leather and horses and something uniquely him. Amelia melted into his embrace, feeling safer than she had in months, feeling right in a way she had never experienced before. Amelia, Jackson murmured into her hair, you are extraordinary. Do you know that? She tilted her face up to his. Kiss me. Please. His lips met hers with a gentleness that quickly deepened into passion. Amelia's hand slid up to his shoulders, steadying herself as the world spun. She had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with such perfect communication of desire and respect and connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I am not a rich man, Jackson said, his forehead resting against hers. I have been saving my wages for years, but I still do not have enough to buy even a small spread. If we pursue this, if we become more than employer and employee, I cannot offer you wealth or status. I do not need wealth or status. I have a ranch. Amelia smiled. What I need is a partner, someone who respects what I'm trying to do here, who will work beside me instead of trying to take over, someone I can trust with my heart as well as my livelihood. I can be that, Jackson said with quiet certainty. If you will have me, I will be that man for the rest of my life. They kissed again, sealing the promise, and Amelia knew with absolute clarity that this was right. Jackson Stone was not like Daniel Morris or any of the other men who had sniffed around the Barrett ranch hoping to marry into property. He wanted her, Amelia, for herself, and he valued her strength rather than seeing it as something to be tamed or suppressed. We should get some sleep, Jackson said reluctantly. Tomorrow will be a long day. You are right. Amelia stepped back, already missing his warmth. But Jackson, thank you for everything. Thank me by staying safe tomorrow. If anything happened to you, I do not think I could bear it. Then we will both stay safe. We have too much to live for now. Morning came cold and clear. Amelia dressed in her riding clothes, sturdy trousers, and a wool jacket that had belonged to her father. She strapped on her gun belt, checking that her revolver was loaded, and braided her hair tightly to keep it out of her way. When she emerged from the house, the four men were already saddling horses. Maria Padilla stood on the porch, worry creasing her kind face. You be careful, Miss Amelia. Those rustlers are dangerous men. We will be careful, Amelia promised. If we are not back by dark, send word to Sheriff Dawson. I will pray for you all, Maria said, crossing herself. The five riders set out as the sun broke over the eastern mountains, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. They rode north, following the tracks that Jackson and Hector had found. The trail led through increasingly rough country, rocky hills dotted with piñon and juniper, deep arroyos that could hide an army. Around midday, Hector held up his hand, signaling a stop. Fresh tracks, he said quietly, pointing to disturbed earth. They passed through here this morning driving cattle. How many men? Amelia asked. Hector studied the ground. 3, maybe 4, and they have at least 20 head of cattle with them. Not just our cattle, then, Pete observed. Must be hitting multiple ranches. They followed the trail more cautiously now, hands near their weapons. The tracks led into a narrow canyon, and Jackson called another halt. This could be a trap, he said, perfect place for an ambush. Or they might just be holed up in there thinking they are safe, Amelia countered. We will never know unless we look. Let me scout ahead on foot, Charlie offered. The young cowboy was eager to prove himself. I can climb up the canyon wall and look down without them seeing me. It was a good plan. Charlie dismounted and scrambled up the rocky slope with the agility of youth. The others waited tensely, horses shifting restlessly as if sensing their rider's nervousness. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 15 minutes, Charlie reappeared, sliding back down the slope. 4 men, he reported in a whisper. They have about 30 head penned in a box canyon. Looks like they are planning to rebrand them before moving them on to sell. 4 against 5, Pete said with satisfaction. I like those odds. We need to take them without gunfire if possible, Amelia said. I do not want any of us shot because of stolen cattle. Jackson, what do you suggest? Jackson considered. Hector and I can circle around and come in from the back of the canyon. They will be focused on the cattle, not expecting trouble. Pete, you and Charlie cover the entrance. Amelia, you stay here with the horses. No, Amelia said flatly. I will go with you and Hector. Pete can stay with the horses. Jackson looked like he wanted to argue, but the expression on Amelia's face stopped him. Fine. But if shooting starts, you get down and stay down. Understood? Understood. They left the horses in Pete's care and began their careful approach. The canyon walls were steep and treacherous, requiring all of Amelia's concentration to avoid loose rocks that might give away their presence. Jackson led the way, moving with surprising stealth for such a large man, and Hector brought up the rear, his rifle ready. As they reached the rim of the box canyon, Amelia could look down and see the rustlers clearly. They were rough-looking men, unshaven and dirty, exactly the kind of outlaws that plagued the territory. One was building a fire to heat branding irons while the others kept watch on the stolen cattle. Jackson signaled to Charlie and Pete, who had reached their positions at the canyon entrance. At his nod, all 5 members of the Barrett Ranch party revealed themselves simultaneously, rifles aimed at the rustlers below. "Hands up!" Jackson shouted. "You are surrounded!" The rustlers froze. For a moment, Amelia thought they would surrender without a fight. Then the man by the fire made a dive for his gun. "Do not!" Amelia yelled, but he was already drawing. Jackson fired first, his bullet kicking up dust near the rustler's feet. The warning shot made the man reconsider, and he slowly raised his hands. The other 3 rustlers, seeing themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered, followed suit. "Smart choice, Jackson called down. Now unbuckle those gun belts nice and slow and kick them away." The rustlers complied, their faces sullen with defeat. Amelia, Jackson, and Hector made their way down into the canyon while Charlie and Pete kept their rifles trained on the prisoners. "You are making a mistake," one of the rustlers said, a scar-faced man with cold eyes. "You know who we work for? This is Garza territory. He will not take kindly to you interfering with his business." Amelia's blood ran cold. Thomas Garza was a notorious outlaw leader who operated throughout southern New Mexico. If these men were part of his gang, the situation was more serious than simple rustling. But Jackson showed no fear. "Then Thomas Garza can take his complaints to Judge Thompson when he stands trial. In the meantime, you boys are going to Socorro to answer for your crimes." They bound the rustlers' hands and loaded them onto their horses. The stolen cattle, including the 30 head from the Barrett Ranch, were pointed back toward home. The sun was beginning its descent as they made their way out of the canyon, tired but triumphant. "That was well done," Hector said to Amelia as they rode. Your father would be proud of how you handled yourself back there." "We all did well," Amelia replied. "It was teamwork." But she noticed Jackson riding close beside her, his expression troubled. When they were slightly ahead of the others, he leaned over in his saddle. "That name, Garza, worries me," he said quietly. "If these men are part of his gang, he might retaliate." "What would you suggest?" Amelia asked. "We cannot let rustlers steal our cattle out of fear." "No, but we can be prepared. I think we should hire a few more hands, men who can handle themselves in a fight, and we should take turns keeping watch at night, at least for a while." "You are right," Amelia agreed. "I will speak to Hector about hiring. There are usually men looking for winter work this time of year." They reached Socorro after dark, delivering the 4 rustlers to a surprised Sheriff Dawson. After giving their statements, the weary group returned to the Barrett Ranch, where Maria had kept dinner warm. Over plates of beef and potatoes, they recounted the day's adventure to her and celebrated their success. But as Amelia lay in bed that night, exhaustion warring with lingering adrenaline, she could not shake a feeling of unease. They had struck a blow against lawlessness, but if Thomas Garza took it personally, they might have invited more trouble than they could handle. The next morning, Jackson appeared at the ranch house after breakfast. "Can we talk?" he asked, and something in his tone made Amelia's heart skip. They walked out to the cottonwood trees, far enough from the house for privacy. Jackson took both of Amelia's hands in his expression serious. "Yesterday, when that rustler went for his gun, all I could think was that if bullets started flying, you might be hit," he said. "In that moment, I realized I cannot live with the fear of losing you. Life is too short and too uncertain, as you said the other night." "Jackson, what are you saying?" He took a deep breath. "I am saying that I love you, Amelia Barrett. I know we have only known each other for 2 months, and I know I should wait and court you properly, but I cannot help how I feel. You are brave and strong and intelligent, and you make me want to be a better man. I do not have much to offer except my hands to work and my heart, but if you will have me, I want to marry you. I want to be your partner in every sense of the word." Joy exploded in Amelia's chest. "Yes, oh yes, Jackson, I love you too. I think I started loving you that first night when you came to the jail, when you offered to help someone you barely remembered. You have given me so much more than testimony in court. You have given me respect and partnership and hope for a future I thought I would face alone." Jackson pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that made her dizzy. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing breathlessly. "We should probably tell the others," Amelia said. "And I suppose we need to make proper arrangements, find a preacher, set a date." "What is wrong with right now?" Jackson asked, only half joking. "I am serious. Why wait? We know what we want." "Because I would like to be married in a dress rather than ranch clothes, and because the hands deserve to celebrate with us, and because rushing into marriage is what got me into trouble with Daniel Morris." "I am not Daniel Morris," Jackson said quietly. "I will never try to take this ranch from you or control you. This is your property, your legacy from your father. I want to help you build it into something even greater, but it will always be the Barrett Ranch, not the Stone Ranch." "What if it becomes the Barrett and Stone Ranch?" Amelia suggested. "We are partners. Remember? Equal partners." Jackson's smile could have lit the entire New Mexico territory. "I like the sound of that. The Barrett and Stone Ranch has a nice ring to it." They set the wedding date for 3 weeks later, giving time to make proper arrangements and for Jackson's family in Wyoming to be notified, though none of them could make the journey on such short notice. Maria took charge of planning, enlisting the help of every woman in Socorro. Amelia's wedding dress was borrowed from a neighbor, altered to fit her taller frame, and decorated with lace that Maria had been saving for a special occasion. The 3 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. In addition to wedding preparations, Amelia and Jackson hired 3 new ranch hands, all experienced men who came with good references. They established a rotating watch schedule and made improvements to the ranch's security. Sheriff Dawson reported that the 4 captured rustlers had been transferred to Santa Fe to await trial, and that he had sent warnings to all the ranchers in the area about Garza's gang. The wedding took place on a bright November morning at the small church in Socorro. It seemed like the entire town had turned out, packing the pews and spilling out into the yard. Amelia walked down the aisle alone, as was proper for a woman without a father, but she felt her father's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. Jackson waited at the altar, dressed in a new suit that made him look almost unbearably handsome. His eyes never left her face as she approached, and the love shining in them made Amelia's steps steady. The ceremony was simple, but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Jackson kissed her with such tender reverence that several women in the congregation sighed audibly. Amelia felt complete in a way she had not since her father's death, as though a missing piece of herself had finally clicked into place. The celebration afterward at the ranch was joyous and loud. Maria and the other women had prepared a feast, tables groaning under the weight of roasted meats, fresh bread, vegetables, and sweets. Music filled the air as someone produced a fiddle and another man a guitar. People danced in the yard while the November sun warmed them. Hector raised a toast to the bride and groom, to Miss Amelia and Mr. Jackson. May your partnership be blessed with prosperity. May your love grow stronger each year, and may the Barrett and Stone Ranch flourish for generations to come. Hear, hear, the crowd roared, raising their cups. As evening fell and the guests began to depart, Amelia and Jackson stood on the porch, watching the last of the wagons disappear down the road toward Socorro. Jackson's arm was around her waist and she leaned into his warmth. "Happy, Mrs. Stone?" he asked. "Deliriously," Amelia replied, "though I am keeping Barrett as well. Amelia Barrett Stone has a certain grandness to it, do you not think? I think anything you choose sounds perfect." Jackson turned her to face him. "I made you a promise that this ranch would always be yours, and I meant it, but I want you to know that my heart is yours as well, completely and forever." "And mine is yours," Amelia said, reaching up to cup his cheek. "We are going to build something wonderful together, Jackson. I can feel it." They went inside as stars began appearing in the darkening sky, ready to begin their life as husband and wife. The ranch house, which had felt so empty and cold after her father's death, now felt warm and alive with possibility. The winter that followed was the happiest Amelia could remember. Despite the hard work required to keep a ranch running through cold months, despite occasional threats from remaining members of Garza's gang that never materialized, despite all the normal challenges of life in the New Mexico territory, she felt blessed beyond measure. Jackson proved himself everything Amelia had hoped and more. He was up before dawn each day, working alongside the hands without ever pulling rank as the boss's husband. He consulted Amelia on every significant decision and backed her authority without question. At night, they would go over the ranch books together, planning for the spring and discussing improvements they wanted to make. But more than his work ethic or business sense, it was Jackson's companionship that Amelia treasured most. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, shared dreams and fears, laughed at private jokes. He made her feel cherished and respected in equal measure. When she made mistakes, he did not criticize, but helped her find solutions. When she succeeded, he celebrated with genuine pride. In February, as the worst of winter began to loosen its grip, Amelia realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first, she thought it was stress or the hard physical work of ranching, but when her body began to show other signs, she could no longer deny the truth. She was pregnant. She told Jackson one evening as they sat before the fireplace in their bedroom. He was reading a livestock catalog while she attempted needlework with predictably poor results. Amelia set down her sewing and took a deep breath. "Jackson, I need to tell you something." He looked up immediately, hearing the seriousness in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am very all right. I am with child." For a moment, Jackson just stared at her. Then his face transformed with joy so pure, it brought tears to Amelia's eyes. He was beside her in an instant, pulling her into his arms. "A baby? We are having a baby?" "Yes," Amelia laughed through her tears. "Sometime in early September, I think." Jackson kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "This is the most wonderful news. How are you feeling? Do you need anything? Should you be resting more?" I am fine, and I do not need to be treated like fragile china, Amelia said firmly. Women have been having babies while working ranches since ranches existed. I will be sensible, but I'm not going to spend the next 7 months sitting in a rocking chair. I know, but you cannot blame a man for wanting to take care of his wife and child. Jackson placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. A baby? Our baby? I can hardly believe it. They spent the rest of the evening making plans, arguing good-naturedly about names and nursery arrangements. Jackson was convinced they would have a daughter who would be as beautiful and strong as her mother. Amelia thought a son was more likely, and teased Jackson about teaching the boy to ride before he could walk. As spring arrived and Amelia's pregnancy began to show, the work of the ranch continued. They bought the new breeding bull Hector had recommended, a massive longhorn that would improve the quality of their herd. They repaired winter damage to fences and buildings. They prepared for spring calving, which went well with only a few losses to predators and difficult births. Amelia worked as long as she was able, only gradually reducing her physical labor as her body grew heavy with the baby. Jackson watched her like a hawk, ready to jump in if she lifted anything too heavy or worked too long in the sun. It was annoying and endearing in equal measure. In late May, a stranger rode up to the ranch house. He was a Mexican man, well-dressed and well-armed, sitting his horse with the confidence of someone who feared nothing. Amelia, who had been working in the garden, stood up slowly, one hand going to the small pistol she now carried at all times. Jackson emerged from the barn, sensing trouble. He moved to stand beside Amelia, his hand near his own weapon. "Can we help you?" he called. The stranger smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I am looking for the woman who captured 4 of my men last year. I hear she runs this ranch." Amelia's blood ran cold, but she kept her voice steady. "I am Amelia Stone, and you are Thomas Garza." "So you have heard of me. Good." Garza dismounted smoothly. "I came to talk, not fight. May I approach?" Jackson looked at Amelia, who nodded slightly. They stood their ground as Garza walked closer, stopping a respectful distance away. "Your men were rustling my cattle in Ixprasitsi," Amelia said. "We had every right to capture them and turn them over to the law." "I do not dispute that," Garza said, surprising her. "My men acted without my permission. They were supposed to be scouting, not stealing. When I learned what they had done and how they had been caught, I was angry, not at you, but at them for their stupidity." "Then why are you here?" Jackson asked, his voice hard. "To make peace and to warn you." Garza's expression became serious. "My men went to trial in Santa Fe. 3 of them received prison sentences. The 4th, the one who tried to draw on you, he was killed trying to escape custody. His brother Diego is looking for revenge. He blames you, Senora Stone, for his brother's death." "That is not reasonable," Amelia protested. "His brother made his own choices." "Diego is not a reasonable man. He is dangerous and angry, and he will come for you." Garza held up a hand as Jackson tensed. "I am telling you this because I do not want innocent blood spilled over a fool's vendetta. Diego is no longer part of my gang. I cast him out when he refused to accept your actions as justified, but he has gathered some men of his own, and I have heard talk that he plans to attack this ranch." "When?" Jackson demanded. "I do not know exactly. Soon, I think. He is impatient." Garza looked at Amelia's swollen belly, and something like regret crossed his face. "You should leave, Senora. Go somewhere safe until this is resolved." "This is my home. I will not be driven away," Amelia said fiercely. "Then prepare to defend it. Diego is not a skilled fighter, but he is vicious, and he has perhaps 6 or 7 men with him." Garza swung back into his saddle. "I have repaid the favor you did me by treating my men justly. What happens now is not my concern." He rode away, leaving Amelia and Jackson staring after him in stunned silence. "We need to get you to safety," Jackson said immediately. "You and the baby, you can stay in Socorro with Maria's sister until this is over." "Absolutely not. If Diego comes, he will find the Barrett and Stone Ranch ready to defend itself." Amelia's jaw was set in a stubborn line Jackson had come to recognize. "I will not abandon our home or our people." They argued about it for the rest of the day, but Amelia would not be moved. Finally, Jackson gave in with the condition that Amelia would stay inside the house if trouble came, and that they would bring in extra guards. Hector sent word to ranchers in the area, and within 2 days, 12 additional men had arrived to help defend the Barrett and Stone Ranch. They prepared as best they could, stockpiling ammunition, establishing overlapping fields of fire, setting up a schedule of rotating guards. The ranch took on the feel of a fortress under siege, tense and watchful. Diego's attack came on a moonless night in early June. Amelia was sleeping restlessly, her pregnant body making comfort difficult, when gunfire erupted outside. Jackson was up instantly, grabbing his rifle. "Stay here," he ordered, then was gone before Amelia could protest. She crouched by the window, pistol in hand, watching muzzle flashes light up the darkness. The defenders were returning fire from prepared positions, and she could see shadowy figures retreating from the main yard. The attackers had expected an easy target, not a prepared defense. The gunfight lasted perhaps 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. When silence finally fell, Jackson returned to the bedroom, his face grim. "Diego is dead," he said. "Pete shot him when he tried to set fire to the barn. The others ran when they saw their leader fall." "Anyone hurt on our side?" "Charlie took a bullet in the shoulder, but Maria has it bandaged and says he will be fine. Everyone else came through without a scratch." Jackson sat on the bed beside her, suddenly looking exhausted. "It is over, Amelia. The threat is finished." She leaned against him, feeling the baby move inside her. "Thank God. I could not bear it if something happened to you. Or you." Jackson kissed the top of her head. "Though I will admit, having a ranch full of armed men certainly helped our cause. We should send them home with our thanks and payment for their time." The additional guards departed over the next few days, leaving the Barrett and Stone Ranch to return to its normal routines. Sheriff Dawson came out to take statements and collect Diego's body. He seemed impressed by the ranch's preparedness. "You folks handled that about as well as could be expected," he said. "Defending your property is your right, and nobody will question it." Summer settled over the ranch, hot and dry, but not unbearably so. Amelia grew larger and less mobile, finally accepting that she needed to rest more and work less. Jackson fussed over her constantly, which was annoying and sweet in turns. Maria took over most of the cooking and helped prepare the nursery, stitching tiny clothes and blankets with loving care. On a blazing September afternoon, Amelia's labor began. Maria sent Charlie racing to Socorro to fetch the midwife, while Jackson paced the living room like a caged animal. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Jackson sat by Amelia's side when the midwife allowed it, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith on September 14, 1874, Amelia gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The midwife cleaned him up and placed him in his mother's arms, and Amelia felt her heart expand to hold more love than she had known was possible. "He is perfect," she breathed, studying the tiny face, the miniature fingers and toes. "He looks like you," Jackson said, his voice choked with emotion. Same determined expression. They named him Thomas, after Amelia's father, with the middle name of Jacob for Jackson's father. Little Tommy was a good baby, sleeping reasonably well and eating with enthusiasm. Jackson proved himself a devoted father, walking the floor at night when the baby fussed, changing diapers without complaint, gazing at his son with unabashed adoration. The ranch prospered. The new bull produced excellent calves, and they were able to sell their cattle for good prices in the spring market. Jackson's careful management and Amelia's business sense proved a formidable combination. They paid off some old debts and made improvements to the property, building a new bunkhouse and expanding the horse barn. 2 years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Tommy grew into a sturdy toddler who followed his father everywhere, mimicking Jackson's walk and trying to wear a hat like him. Amelia discovered she was pregnant again, And this time the pregnancy was easier. In April of 1876, they welcomed a daughter they named Sarah Catherine. "Now we have one of each," Jackson said, cradling his newborn daughter. "Our family is complete." But life had more surprises in store. Over the next decade, 3 more children joined the Stone family, another son, Benjamin, in 1878, twin girls Emma and Grace in 1880, and a final son, Matthew, in 1882. The ranch house rang with the sounds of children laughing and playing, and Amelia could not have been happier. The Barrett and Stone Ranch became known throughout New Mexico as one of the finest operations in the territory. Amelia's management and Jackson's skill with livestock created a reputation for quality and fair dealing. They hired good people and treated them well, creating loyalty that lasted years. Former hands who moved on to other ranches spread word of the Stones as employers worth working for. Tommy grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch as much as his mother and grandfather before him. By the time he was 12, he could rope and brand with the skill of men twice his age. Sarah was more bookish, preferring to help her mother with the accounts and correspondence. Benjamin had a gift with horses, able to calm even the wildest Mustang with patience and soft words. The twins were inseparable and into everything, keeping Maria running to keep up with their mischief. Little Matthew, the baby of the family, was spoiled by everyone but showed signs of his father's steady temperament. In 1885, New Mexico got word that it might soon become a state rather than a territory. Amelia and Jackson attended town meetings in Socorro to discuss what this would mean for ranchers and landowners. They wanted to ensure that the rights they had fought so hard to protect would be preserved under statehood. "Can you believe it?" Amelia said one evening as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. "When I was born, this was barely civilized. Now we are talking about statehood, schools, proper law enforcement." "Progress," Jackson agreed. "Though I will admit I miss some of the wildness of the old days. Life was simpler, even if it was harder." "Do you ever regret it?" Amelia asked quietly. "Staying here, marrying me, taking on a ready-made ranch instead of building your own from nothing?" Jackson turned to look at her, his whiskey-colored eyes as warm as the day they first met. "Not for one single second? You gave me everything I ever wanted, Amelia. A home, a family, work I can take pride in, and a partnership with the strongest woman I have ever known. If I had to do it all again, I would not change a thing." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. After all these years, he could still make her heart race with a few sincere words. "I love you, Jackson Stone. And I love you, Amelia Barrett Stone. Forever." They sat together as the sun set, painting the New Mexico sky in shades of gold and crimson. The children's laughter floated to them on the evening breeze, and cattle lowed in distant pastures. Everything they had built together, everything they had fought to protect, spread out around them in peaceful prosperity. Years continued to pass. Tommy married a rancher's daughter from nearby Magdalena and brought her to live at the Barrett and Stone Ranch, learning the business so he could eventually take over. Sarah surprised everyone by going east to school, returning 3 years later with a teaching certificate and a passion for educating rural children. She opened a school in Socorro that served ranch families throughout the county. Benjamin partnered with a Navajo horse trader and started a breeding operation that became famous throughout the Southwest. The twins married brothers and settled on adjoining properties close enough to visit but far enough to maintain independence. Matthew, the baby, showed unexpected business acumen and began managing the financial side of the ranch operations, freeing Amelia and Jackson to focus on other interests. In 1890, when Amelia was 47 and Jackson 49, they took their first real vacation. They traveled to San Francisco, something neither had ever imagined doing. For 2 weeks, they acted like young lovers again, exploring the city, eating in fine restaurants, attending the theater. It was a gift to themselves after years of hard work and sacrifice. "We built a good life," Amelia said one evening as they walked along the San Francisco waterfront, watching ships come and go in the harbor. "The best life," Jackson agreed. "Though I will be glad to get home to the ranch, Cities are impressive, but they do not compare to New Mexico sunsets. They returned home to find everything running smoothly under Tommy's management, and were greeted with a family dinner that included children, grandchildren, ranch hands past and present, and half the population of Socorro. It was loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. As the new century approached, bringing with it automobiles and telephones and other marvels, Amelia sometimes reflected on how much had changed since that terrible day when she was arrested for supposedly stealing her own property. If Jackson had not appeared in her life exactly when she needed him most, if he had not been brave enough to testify and skilled enough to help her defend what was hers, her entire life would have taken a different path. But he had appeared, and he had stayed, and together they had built something that would last for generations. The Barrett and Stone Ranch was not just property or business. It was a legacy of hard work, fair dealing, and the radical notion that a woman could be as capable as any man if given the chance. In 1902, Amelia and Jackson celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a party that drew people from across New Mexico. Former ranch hands, business associates, friends, family, and even a few former adversaries attended to honor the couple who had become legends in Socorro County. Tommy gave a toast that brought tears to many eyes. "My parents taught me that partnership means respecting each other's strengths, supporting each other's weaknesses, and never taking credit for what you built together. They showed me that love is not about grand gestures, but about showing up every day, doing the work, making the hard decisions together. Everything I am, everything this family has become, started with my mother's courage and my father's faith." To Amelia and Jackson Stone, the finest people I have ever known. The crowd roared their approval. Jackson pulled Amelia close and kissed her in front of everyone, making her blush like a young bride despite being nearly 54 years old. 25 years and you still make me blush," she whispered against his lips. "Wait until year 50, he whispered back. "I am just getting started." They danced together as a hired band played waltzes and reels. Amelia's hair was more gray than brown now, and Jackson's temples were silver. But they moved together with the ease of long practice, anticipating each other's steps, perfectly in sync. As the party wound down and guests began departing, Amelia and Jackson stood on the porch of the ranch house, just as they had done 1,000 times before. 5 children grown and living their own lives, 8 grandchildren and counting, a ranch that sprawled across thousands of acres, a reputation built on integrity and hard work, a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger for it. "Do you remember that first night in the jail?" Amelia asked, "and when you came and told me you wanted to help?" "I remember thinking you were the bravest woman I had ever seen," Jackson said. "And I remember knowing even then that you were going to change my life." "We changed each other's lives." Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I was so lost after my father died. I thought I had to face everything alone. Then you appeared and showed me what real partnership could be." "You showed me what real courage looks like," Jackson countered. "What real strength is. You never gave up, even when everything seemed impossible." They stood in comfortable silence as stars appeared overhead, the same stars that had watched over them for a quarter-century of love and work and family. In the distance, cattle moved through the darkness, and a horse whinnied from the barn. The smells of dust and sage and growing things filled the air. This was home, would always be home, built on the foundation of 2 people who had been brave enough to trust each other when it mattered most. "Do you think we will get another 25 years?" Amelia asked softly. "I am counting on it," Jackson said. "I plan to be that annoying old couple that everyone says should slow down, except we never do because we love what we built too much to stop." Amelia laughed. "I like that plan." They went inside eventually, to the home they had made together, to the bed they had shared for 25 years. Outside, the New Mexico night settled over the Barrett and Stone Ranch, peaceful and prosperous, a testament to courage in the face of injustice and the power of 2 people working side by side toward a common dream. The years that followed brought the inevitable changes of aging. Jackson's joints grew stiff from decades of hard ranch work, and Amelia's eyesight weakened, making the account books harder to read. But their minds remained sharp, and their devotion to each other never wavered. They handed over more responsibility to Tommy and the other children, content to advise rather than direct. In 1912, New Mexico finally achieved statehood. Amelia and Jackson attended the ceremony in Santa Fe, watching with pride as the territory they had helped tame became a full part of the United States. It felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. "Your father would have loved to see this," Jackson said as they stood in the crowd, watching the new state flag being raised. "He did see it," Amelia replied, absolute certainty in her voice. "He is with us always, in the land we steward, in the values we pass to our children, in the legacy we have built. He is here." They lived to see automobiles replace horses on the streets of Socorro, to see electricity come to the ranch house, to see airplanes flying overhead. The world changed around them, but some things remained constant. The love of family, the satisfaction of honest work, the beauty of the land they had devoted their lives to protecting and improving. In the spring of 1920, as Amelia approached her 77th birthday, she fell ill. The doctor from Socorro came to examine her and took Jackson aside with grave news. Her heart was failing, weakened by decades of hard living and the natural decline of age. There was nothing to be done except make her comfortable. Jackson took the news stoically, as he had faced every challenge in his life, but inside he was screaming. The thought of life without Amelia after 45 years of marriage was unbearable. She had been his partner, his best friend, his reason for everything. How could he exist in a world that did not include her, but he showed her only strength and love in those final weeks? He sat by her bedside, holding her hand, telling her stories of their life together. The children came to visit, bringing grandchildren and great-grandchildren, filling the house with love and noise. Amelia smiled at them all, her eyes still bright despite her weakening body. One warm May evening, as the sun set over the mountains they had looked at together for more than 4 decades, Amelia squeezed Jackson's hand weakly. "I am not afraid," she whispered. "How can I be when I have had such a blessed life? I was accused of stealing what was already mine, and you proved my ownership in court. But what you really gave me was so much more than property. You gave me partnership, respect, children, and a love that never faltered. You made me happier than I ever thought possible." Tears streamed down Jackson's weathered face. "I am the one who was blessed. You took a wandering cowboy with nothing but his saddle and his skills and made him part of something greater than himself. Every good thing in my life came from you." "Then we are even." Amelia smiled. "Promise me you will not grieve too long. Live, Jackson. Enjoy your children and grandchildren. Sit on the porch and watch the sunset. Ride the fence lines one more time for me. Live fully until we meet again." "I promise," Jackson said, though the words nearly choked him. She died that night, peacefully, with her hand in his and her family surrounding her. The funeral was the largest Socorro had ever seen, with people coming from across New Mexico and beyond to pay respects to Amelia Barrett Stone, pioneer, rancher, mother, and beloved member of the community. Jackson kept his promise. Though grief was his constant companion, he did not let it consume him. He lived at the ranch house, helping Tommy and the grandchildren where he could, sharing stories of their grandmother with the youngest generation. He rode the fence lines on gentle days, remembering Amelia beside him. He sat on the porch each evening watching the sunsets they had admired together for so many years. 5 years after Amelia's death, on a crisp October morning in 1925, Jackson Stone died in his sleep at the age of 77. He was found sitting in his rocking chair on the porch, a peaceful expression on his face, as though he had simply closed his eyes and let go. Tommy buried his father next to his mother on a hillside overlooking the ranch under the vast New Mexico sky they had both loved. The headstone read, "Jackson Stone, 1848-1925, Beloved husband, father, and partner, he proved what was right when the world said otherwise. Next to it, Amelia's headstone said, Amelia Barrett Stone, 1843-1920. Rancher, mother, pioneer, she fought for what was hers and built a legacy that will never die. The Barrett and Stone Ranch continued for generations after them, managed by their descendants, guided by the principles of hard work, fairness, and respect that Amelia and Jackson had established. The story of how they met, how a cowboy had ridden to the rescue of a woman unjustly accused, and how they had built an empire together through partnership and love, became part of family legend, told and retold around dinner tables and campfires, and on quiet evenings, when the wind blew just right across the New Mexico hills. Some said you could still see two figures on the porch of the old ranch house, sitting side by side, watching the sunset together, as they had done for 45 years of marriage and would do for all eternity. A cowboy and a rancher, partners in life and death, their love story written in the very soil of the land they had fought to protect and passed on to future generations as their most precious legacy.